All right, today we'll be discussing why recent game launches have been such a problem with specifically the recent release of Helldivers 2, the problems that gamers were having with that game. So what were the problems, Nate? You were the one experiencing them. I only played it like twice.
Right.
So
here's some facts about some Helldivers. So Helldivers was launched on February 8th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I played for the first 2 or 3 days. Okay. And it was perfectly fine. I was like, oh.
Really?
Wow. Cool.
I guess it kind of just snowballed.
And then it blew up, right? Like,
yeah.
Unbelievable amount of people slamming the servers, and they just weren't ready for that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What was the player count what was the player count? Do we have a graph of the player count?
No, because
over the days, yeah.
Yeah.
All I could find was like month. So that doesn't tell me like where it was.
I can tell you today.
The Steam hold that? Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely do. But right now, I can tell you today,
it's like around 800 or something.
Peak today was 440,000 on Steam, just underneath Apex Legends at 465,000.
So at the beginning,
fourth and fifth.
The cap was at 250,000, I think.
Yeah.
On launch, and then it went to
across all platforms.
Yes, and then it went to
this
450.
Is just on Steam.
And now they recently put it up to 800. So with that being said,
man, I have so much to say about this.
Yeah, I know.
It's so great.
So Helldivers 2, is built on a modified version of Autodesk Stingray game engine.
Uh-huh.
Autodesk Stingray has been discontinued since 2018. No support.
What are you going to do?
Helldivers 1 was also built on Autodesk Stingray.
What the fuck? That's the engine?
Yeah. This is the engine.
Autodesk is a 3D.
Yeah.
Right?
Helldivers has sold 4 million copies as of the date of these notes, which was February 21st, 24th area. I didn't look it up now. Currently, as of those notes, so the cap on February 21st was 450K of users, concurrent users. Right now, it's at 800K is the cap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The game was playable during the first couple of days, like I said, but then riddled with server crashes, game crashes, disconnections, server capacity limits. Whenever I try to connect to the game, it wouldn't put me in a queue. It would just retry every 30 seconds or every 10 seconds, and then would try every 20 seconds, and then every 30 seconds. So
that's called a progressive backoff.
Right. So in between those, people are also trying to connect, right? So during the 20 seconds that I'm waiting to connect, someone could get in before me.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fucking stupid.
Well,
so now people would log in the mornings before they go to work, and they would leave their shit on all day until they get to play at night.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
also
this is why that's the reason they do the first thing, where they back people off, because what might happen is you might connect and you might not be there.
Right. Okay.
So they want people to actually be there and anyway.
Right, correct. So as of these notes of February 21st, they did not have an AFK kick. Okay? They did not have one.
Session timeout.
Yeah.
Or a session timeout. Now they do.
Okay.
How
long did that take?
That took like 2 weeks.
Okay.
From launch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the gist of it.
Okay.
Of the story of Helldivers 2. Okay.
Okay.
So where do we want to start with this?
Well, I think the first thing that you want to start at is the caps.
Why couldn't they add more servers, Chris? Why couldn't they just copy and paste more servers in there?
No, okay. So that's a good question. It really depends on how the servers scale, right?
Yep.
How work is done. Like what is it that the server does when it receives data, and what are the processing units of whatever the server system is. So you have like the game world, and you have like a login lobby, and you have all these server parts, right? But they all come in through a gateway, typically something called an API gateway. The API is the application programmer's interface, which is like a set of calls that you can send, typically over HTTP, right? Like over web, HTTPS, to a server. And you say, hey, here's a request. And if you ever look at any API docs or whatever, you'll see like they have post, get, right? These are the commands that you can send to a server of any type. Now, the endpoints /API/ whatever the command is like where you send the request. That actually defines the request. And then inside the body of the request, inside the HTTP bundle that you send along, has all the parameters of whatever you want to tell it, right? Including authentication. I mean, and that's where authentication happens, right? You have the authorization bearer, all that stuff. Now, API gateway, being in the cloud, as I am, at working in the cloud.
Oh, what I wanted to say about is
fair enough.
what gives you the experience to talk on this? Tell us what you like. Just so in a short form, what do you do? Who are
so for the people that haven't listened to the podcast or that episode that I was on, Nate and I used to work together. The place that he works now, I used to be a part owner, and then I moved on about, I guess 8 years ago.
10 years ago, yeah.
8 years, man, crazy. Anyway, but what I went on to do is I work as a cloud engineer. I work primarily in Microsoft Azure, the Azure system, like ecosystem, but I've worked in both AWS and GCP as well. The primary technology I work with is Kubernetes. So containers and scalable systems. That's like
cool.
What I do is scale stuff. So it's nice to hear this, but a lot of clues can be gleaned from the numbers that are given out. And that's why you look for them. So 450,000 seems arbitrary, but it's not. Typically, it has to do with rate limits. So anything that you can do in the cloud is billable, right? Like the computer or whatever, this resource that you need exists, okay? And it exists to service you. Now, how
they get a charge for it.
Yeah, and how you pay for it is done based on what the service is. So if it's a VM, right, a virtual machine, you get paid, you charge by the hour that it's on, because it's consuming electricity, right? It's consuming space in their server farm. It's providing value to you, all of that stuff. It might be running a service, etc. But there are other kinds of services that don't run all the time. They run like on demand, right? API gateways are API gateways always kind of live, but they service a lot. And when you have something that services a lot, time isn't enough, because you can squeeze more money out of people if you're like, well, wait a second. 1 second of this thing being up can service like a zillion things. So we're going to charge you by the thing, not by the time.
Okay.
Right? So if you say your API rate limit is 300,000 requests per second, and your API sucks, and you have a lot of requests going, all of a sudden your capacity for load is not limited by compute. It's not limited by storage. It's not limited by network. It's limited by the fact that you're sending too many messages. Your communication sucks.
For that API.
For whatever it is. Now that's one potential thing, right? Okay. So the other thing is potentially compute power, right? Maybe they can only host one game on a really big VM. It's one VM that kind of runs everything. Like I'm making shit up here. A game world or like a game probably lives in a pod.
That's what I'm thinking.
Kubernetes server.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't. Or maybe that pod is really big. Like maybe it needs like 16 or 32 gigs of RAM, or it needs like a zillion CPUs, or it needs like a special something in the back end.
You're talking about like a cluster?
Well, the cluster.
Like a server cluster?
Yeah. So the way Kubernetes works is just a scheduler, right? Like if you think like Tetris.
Between a bunch of computers or a bunch of CPUs.
Well, between a bunch of compute jobs, right? So I have let's consider one game world as a self-contained thing, okay? And when a person wants to join and play, that thing must be instantiated, right? And that's why you call them instances, right? And like, oh, I want to go into this heroic instance, right? Yeah. It just means that it got spawned. And it's funny that the compute vernacular has like bled into the gaming vernacular. Like, oh, I want to go that instance. Like, really? You know what an instance is? Like, why don't you just go to that dungeon? Because you know it's separate from the other dungeons that have existed because it's just yours, right? So whatever their architecture is for that is what needs to scale.
Right.
Right? You need...
But when they're designing the solution...
Yeah.
That's where you should be planning for the scalability, no? And if they didn't do that...
How many players concurrently did Helldivers 1 have?
Probably a lot less.
Probably a lot less, yeah.
So they hit a home run, and they didn't know it. They had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay. If the machines are really big, And they're like, bro, you know what it costs us to run 450,000 people? We can't afford it. We need to cap everybody or we're going to run out of money. I don't care how many copies they sold, right, or whatever. They need to make like deals with Microsoft, with Google, with AWS. They need to hire people because all of a sudden they have a lot of problems that they didn't expect, right? Especially if it's an order of magnitude higher. That's really what I think might have happened. Like you have something that had like, say, 25 or 50,000 concurrent players, and now it has 500,000 concurrent players. And those problems are different. Right? If you would play any Factorio, this is, you know, all those gamers out there love Factorio. You should play Factorio if you want to learn about scale. Sometimes the same thing is the same size, but it does a completely different thing, or it's better at it, or it's whatever. Like an engine, right? So you have this engine from 2018. They built the first game. They're like, it worked out pretty good. Let's make number 2.
Yeah.
And they're like, just start from number 1, right? It's like, well, guys, we made a mistake. We should have like done this. Or maybe they realized that they were close on some features that would allow scalability, but they didn't think it was going to scale that fast. You said it was 3 days, right?
Yeah,
so if they had like a 2-week plan to release the ability to scale 2 weeks later, and they're like, you know, it's worth the risk. Clearly not.
Yeah,
Clearly they could have waited 2 weeks and
They
made
probably
sure
had
that you
this
could
as the risk list
That's
of
right.
risks for the
That's
project.
right. And they're not rushing to implement something that they didn't realize. What I'm guessing is that it was on the roadmap and it just didn't make the cut, or they didn't de-risk it. And you know whose fucking problem that is? That's the product owner, man. The developers aren't the fault problem, because the developers just get told what to do. Listen, I've had an
The
experience.
operational authority.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's like, what does business say? Business is like, we want money. And they're like, okay, so make us a game. And then the product owner, which is like,
Or the principal operations officer, the POO.
I don't think, are you part of the P suite?
I have this written down here. I have this written down.
Okay,
Nowadays, more and more, we see this. It's now a big part of the game industry. It's the money. It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's a big money business now. Publishers set the deadlines according to, you know, whatever their fiscal, you know, whatever their fiscal plans, and they tell the devs, hey, it's got to be launched by this date, and so the devs kind of plan for that however they can. But I mean, this, and again, like you said, they probably had the risk outlined on the roadmap, but it's like, okay, what risks can we
accept and what can we not? Yes,
exactly. So they have to skip on some things because the deadline is this. The publisher wants the game out at this time because this is their financial plan, blah, blah, blah.
And listen, the devs
It didn't used to be like this,
the
I
devs,
feel.
No, you know what used to happen? I mean, read the EA horror stories.
But with all that saying, with the risk and them doing all that stuff, there has been games that released before that completely got fucked by all of this stuff. Okay, like I have a list here.
Great. Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So, well, actually, so Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, which released, I think, like a week before Helldivers 2. Okay, that's like an MMO squad shooter, much like Helldivers. Okay, Wayfinders is a free-to-play MMO action RPG. While though it wasn't very like hyped, okay, it still ran into the same kind of issues. Nightingale, which was a new crafting game, ran into the same issues. It's the same issues every time. It's like people aren't looking at games that come out 6 months prior, 4 months prior, and say, these guys had issues. What can we get ready? I'm not saying what can we do to withstand that initial blow, because they don't know the numbers. They're not going to know the numbers of official release, okay? They'll have betas, they'll have play tests, and they'll get like fractions of the people playing, right?
Yeah, but they don't have load tests.
Right.
And that's the problem.
That's
load tests always come last.
Right, okay? And you can't
Because
really
they're expensive
do a
to
load
run.
test. Ah, okay. Yes.
Very expensive. I want to simulate what it's like to have 500,000 players playing.
Right.
For 2 hours.
Mhm.
Well, that costs the same as 500,000 players playing.
Wow.
Now, there are systems within these cloud providers where if you're a company like this, you can receive sponsorship to do these load tests. They're like, listen, you can use our shit.
Yeah.
We'll give you this special thing. It's called a sponsorship subscription or whatever. And they give you like $500,000, whatever you negotiate.
Mhm.
So what probably happened was they're like using AWS or Azure. I don't know who they're with, but I think it's Microsoft. And Microsoft's really good at this, but you got to ask them. You got to go to them and say, listen, we have to do this. We do this with the product that we're building. We scale out like 500 nodes, like 500 VMs, up, down, all
wow,
day.
okay. Yeah.
All day, like exercising, 200 gigs a piece,
Mhm.
500 nodes. Bro, that's petabytes that I'm provisioning and destroying every like 10 minutes,
Wow.
right? But I don't need them. That's not the point. The point is, does the system work?
Yes.
Right? But I am provisioning real things because that's how you test.
Mhm.
You don't test with fake things.
Or
You only
yeah.
test with fake things where fake things are okay, right? Where they actually are representative. Now, your test plan isn't always perfect, right? Your test plan doesn't know everything.
Right.
You get hit by shit in the real world that is like, what the fuck? So I don't know what their situation was, but it's typically not complete incompetence. It's typically just a missed risk assessment or bad management. But I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I have been in situations like I found a 30% scale increase in something that we were doing. And I like that number gets thrown around a lot, especially on resumes, but this is real. And I'll even explain what it is. Like Azure has a auto scaler, right? Like a Kubernetes cluster that will make nodes go up and down based on what you need.
Mhm.
Okay. But the way they do it on the back end, and this is about a rate limit, our clients get throttled. Like throttling, you know what throttling is like when you choke something, or you kill it. Like throttling just means choking off the stream of requests, right? And the client is me, like the person making the request is the client server. So when we scale our nodes up, that autoscaler is polling. Every 10 seconds, it's called a scan interval. It scans every 10 seconds and says, hey, tell me all the details about all the nodes that I have right now. Okay.
Right.
And it does a backend call to Azure for that because the VMs are provisioned. This is a managed service. So like you can run your own Kubernetes cluster or you can run a managed one. Azure takes care of it and they charge you for it. It's great because you don't have to fucking worry about it. It just runs, the controller's there, and I just fucking put it's Tetris and Lego. That's great. But they could have bugs in what they do.
Right.
So when they call back and they're getting this list, eventually when I have 400 nodes, it's like, you're asking me too much. Fuck off. And now my stuff doesn't work because of their integration.
All your stuff doesn't work.
Well, no, until the throttle goes away.
Okay.
It slows down for like a minute and then it comes back and slows down for a minute. And it's like really annoying. And like, well, why is this happening? And then I finally found it. Right. And you're like, oh, that's the problem. So I was like, well, how do I fix this? Well, first of all, if I have hundreds of nodes, I don't need you to scan them all every 10 seconds.
Yes, correct.
Right? So I increased that to 3 minutes. Scan every 3 minutes if I need new nodes, right? Because my scale should be that I have some nodes. I'm not at zero.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So I am able to service some requests. But as soon as I implemented that, everything went faster because the throttling was actually happening intermeshed with other requests, and it was like being let go and coming on and being let go and coming on. So all I had to do was change one documented but not prominently documented setting in order to deal with a back-end issue that I couldn't see unless I turned on a bunch of logs and whatever. Okay. Yeah. So in that way, I found all this scale in one setting that had nothing to do with any of my architecture, right? So if you ask them what the fuck happened, maybe they had like a double API call that was like embedded really deep. They couldn't figure out why their APIs were all getting throttled, right? That reconnect or try again, it could be their API gateway saying, I'm not accepting any more connections for this API call. Go fuck yourself, right? And their whatever library they use to connect to the API has like an automatic back off. right? Now they need to release a patch. Okay, guys, we got to build. We're already getting fucked. There's only 4 of us. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. I don't know what their actual situation is, but if it were me, they hit scale problems that they were like either not experienced enough to know about or not aware of because of lack of load testing.
Right.
I can tell you the same thing's going to happen to us. We're trying to load test, but it's hard.
Check
it's a hard thing.
So I'm going to read a little thing because everyone's shooting them tweets, right? Shitting on them, yelling at them, armchair developing, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes.
So, official Helldivers 2 quotes, quote unquote, despite our best efforts to increase server capacity to accommodate all of you who want to dive for freedom, we are experiencing capacity issues, Arrowhead wrote. We are once more working without delay to improve the issues, and we hope that we have a fix in place as soon as possible. Thank you. And then he follows up, hey, everyone, thank you for your patience during the server maintenance. With it, we deployed 3 rapid fixes, quote unquote, aimed at improving the situation with rewards often not being handed out properly, login issues, server
bugs,
capacity.
That's it.
Yeah.
1 and 2 capacity. Yeah.
Okay. To speak in technical terms, our services, as well as our partner services, have a rate limiter that denies connections beyond a volume per minute to prevent the entire system from failing.
Yeah.
Chris was saying earlier. We managed to increase that rate limit to from 10,000 per minute to 20,000 per minute. Yeah. And the total capacity of concurrent players was increased from 250,000 to 360,000. That was within the first week, I think. Or
so
2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool.
This was, however, still not enough as the player count jumped to 360K
immediately
after 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, right. Duh.
Okay. So, as such, the issue with login remains. If for any reason you get the fail to connect to server issue, it means that the maximum number of people are logged in. Yada yada yada. And that's pretty much what he had to say
Connection
about that.
limit.
So connection limit is due to high traffic on the servers leading toward. With that being said, there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some developers were coming. Some other developers that had issues before in the past were coming to try to, back them up and explain things. So, the developers from Dauntless, which was a free-to-play like Monster Hunter game, they said, quote unquote, the launch of Dauntless in 2019 was the most difficult launch of my career. Before unraveling, the studio had originally planned for 260,000 concurrent users. Peak. Its open beta period sorted 65,000 players. But when the thing launched, it fell over at 10,000 concurrent users. So it didn't even hit their beta numbers.
But that's because they probably added new features along with the output, which contained bugs that killed their scale. That's terrible release planning.
Exactly.
Holy shit.
So what happened was the server started crashing at 10,000 current players when they had already tested in the beta, sported 65,000. This took them 3 weeks to figure out and get stable. This was due to a year of tweaks to the code and infrastructure.
Year that were differed from beta,
from the beta,
and then they released. They're like,
Yes.
you know what? Let's just put it in production, boys. We've never tested this code ever. Like, that's insane. Yeah.
Now, she says, quote, we'd 1/6 our capacity before we hit issues. We load tested every service up to 260,000 and ran bots to 100,000 and didn't matter. It just ended up breaking at the end, in the end on like official launch. That's what she said.
Yeah. But all those justifications are like, what about the year of tweaks? Like, why weren't you updating the beta?
Why not have another beta?
Why not just make beta prod? Like, I don't get it. Like,
right.
So this is another really important concept. There are different environments that these things exist in. There's typically 3, right? There's like a dev, there's a pre-production, and there's a production. Production has to be okay all the time. It's the most important thing. It's your whole business is that. And then there's other 2 places that you beat the fuck out of, right? Dev is where you do all your development. Pre-production or staging, sometimes it's called, is intended to replicate production.
Right.
Exactly, right? In that you want to detect any problems with your deployment in that environment so that you don't brick production when you push right? So you have something that is in the current state that production is in. You call that staging. And then you attempt to upgrade staging and you run your smoke test. That's what
Right.
they're called. What's the smoke test? How do you validate that your service is good? You have a bunch of fucking checklists, right? This and that and that. You automate that, and then you hit go, and then it deploys, and then you run your smoke test, and you're like, green, it's good, right? And then, I mean, if you do blue-green, you could say, okay, now staging is production, and you take production down, and you just redirect the fire hose of API requests to the new service.
Right.
That's called blue-green deployment. You can do that, and that's like zero downtime. Because you have your new features, right? You let all your old games die with the old version, and any new games are created with the new one. And that's what's so wonderful about instantiated environments, is that they can be completely independent of one another. But yeah, like I'm not surprised that they ran into issues. 800,000 seems so. Those deal when they're partner services, they probably had to call Microsoft and say, "Guys,
Oh yeah,
we need more."
guaranteed.
Right? And they're like, okay, well, we're busy, or we'll call you on Tuesday, or they get the wrong guy. That happens. Like you go on your Azure support and you're like, create ticket, A level, call me anytime or whatever. And they're like, hi, run this AZ command. Like, go fuck yourself, man. My entire business is burning to the ground. I need to know, like, I need an engineer and not support.
Right.
So maybe that was like a day's worth of bullshit that they had to learn, right? Anyway.
Jeez, man. Matt, back in the it's all these online games.
Yes,
back in the day,
precisely.
it wasn't like this, you know? There was no patches, there was no
Game Boy with AA batteries.
Which brings me to
physical disc for PlayStation or your cartridge. You plug it in, the game is ready. There's no updates for that. You just plug it in and it goes.
Yeah, and if it's ET and you get caught in a fucking pit, and you can never get out. Well, fuck you with that game. You don't get a patch. It doesn't work.
You bury it in the desert.
That's right.
Fuck it. But with PC, it's obviously harder because you have all these different configurations. You have all these different hardware things. Back then, it was, even now on console, it's more simple than developing on PC because you know your set of hardware. You know exactly what the end user is using.
But you realize that these problems are not problems with the client.
No,
the game is fine. It's the game world that doesn't work. You can't play. It's like saying, "Oh, this is all these problems with these web addresses, websites, is the browser." No, it's not. The browser's fine. The internet's fine. What's wrong with your site? I'm trying to look at your site. I'm trying to interact with the service that you're providing. The client is okay. My client works. Why isn't your server up? I paid for the server, not the client. I don't give a shit about the client. You could, if I like, let's say they're like, you know what? We rewrote the client in something new, like a different language, right? Would I have to buy it again? No. I'm playing the game. The game is displayed on my screen with a client, and
how it gets to me
is not my problem.
It doesn't matter.
Right? The client could be my Samsung television on Xbox Cloud Gaming. Now I don't have any. What server? You know what I mean? Like. So the entire gaming idea of what you're buying is changing. Like I used to buy Civ, like Civilization 6. It's got a game engine and a bunch of assets and voices, and I'm able to like blow people up with nukes as Gandhi. But I am buying that, not like create a world for me that I can then play with. It's not a web game. It's a client. But Helldivers or any of these like interactive games are essentially web games. You know?
Yeah, because you've got to go there to play
all these online games.
Now, coming into the next point, we can probably say that you're never going to find out how many players are going to launch your game on launch day, right? Purchase them, even with pre-purchases or how you say, like pre-orders, yada yada. You'll get a number from that. You'll get a number from beta, but they'll never actually be the amount of players that will come in on launch day because of word of mouth, because of the last minute hype that happens, people talking. Helldivers, for instance, when one person talks about it, they're going to get 3 other of their buddies to jump in with them as for a squad of 4, right? Because every time I'm on PlayStation, my one buddy is in a squad of 4 all the time. So like even if you were to take your initial number and be like, okay, times that by 4, just to do it. Okay, and we'll buy all the numbers. We'll buy all the capacity for times 4. Okay, so let's say we're thinking at, what did they say? 200,000 was their first thing. It's like, okay,
260, right?
we're gonna go for 800,000 right off the bat, and that amount of money that they'd have to pour over to Microsoft to have that available.
Microsoft will make it available. You just have to plan.
Yeah. Okay. Question. So I'm the Helldivers team, and I see they didn't even have a beta, so they don't know numbers from betas.
Were they an early release game?
No, they didn't have an early release, which brings me to my next point that I'll be bringing up. Okay. So they have zero. They don't have a fucking idea. They have zero idea about how many.
No, you don't know that.
Okay, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know that. Okay, but
do they have a community? Did they was there a subreddit?
Maybe.
I mean, someone's got to know something. They were going to sell it. They're like, hey guys,
that's why
they had a budget.
Who does this? Okay, who at the
product owner?
Okay, product owner hires a buddy, an analyst. Okay.
Well, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And the analyst says, I'm going to look at the past year of games of this kind of genre, of this kind of topic for these platforms. Okay.
Look at the first game, the original game.
I'm going to say, we had this many players here. This game had this many players here. It's sort of what we're aiming for. It's not backed by Sony, so Sony might not push it as hard as they're going to push our game. All these analytics. How do they come to a point of X amount of players?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
Right.
And how did they miss so badly?
Right. So they didn't have a beta test. Okay. They didn't have an early access. Okay. They didn't have an early release. Okay. I didn't see any of this stuff, which would help some kind of count.
They had no closed beta?
No, I don't think so. I didn't look into closed beta.
Because if they didn't, then I think that would have been their solution.
Another thing is they launched on 2 platforms, not just one.
Yeah, for PS5 and PC, but it's like PS5, right? Usually a PS5 game doesn't have a Sony game won't usually release a beta. You know what I mean? It's weird. It's very weird.
I think it's the cross-platform they didn't expect, or they didn't plan for, just that massive. That basically
Steam hit.
Doubled. Yeah, Steam is massive.
So
they have 400,000 players today on Steam alone at the same time. And they just didn't.
The amount of buzz that blew up after was unbelievable.
Yeah. That was a big part of it too, probably.
Huge.
Because
the other thing is this is not going to stay there.
Right.
No.
This game doesn't have that kind of stamina.
Right. So what happens is, I was going to ask you, what happens? So in my hypothetical world where I bought 800,000 seats, let's say 800,000 players with Microsoft, they don't hit that. They hit 400,000. Can I tell Microsoft to tone that down? Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How much does that cost me? So if I buy $800,000 for, let's say, $1 million, or if I buy 800,000 players for $1 million, okay? Do I have to pay?
So you're assuming they're making an assumption here.
Yes.
That I need to fix.
Okay.
You're assuming that technology that lets you go from 250,000 to 800,000 is the same.
Okay.
If they expected to be able to go to 360,000, whatever it was, like that next smaller move, and the reason that they did that is because you only had to change one thing. Right? You heard him say it. It's like, we've gotten them to change the rate limiter, and now we can go to 360,000. Not 500,000, because they wanted to 360,000. We're going to but they paid double, right? 10,000 to 20,000, right? Per second. I believe the 800,000 jump is a totally different tech. You max out the first thing. Why didn't they buy 40,000?
Right. I guess, yes.
Because it's not available.
Simpler question, yes. That's what
to migrate to the higher.
Okay. And how long
solution.
does that take?
Okay.
Especially if you don't want to fuck it up.
Right. But my question is, so as a subscription, like everything is, I buy a year of something, right?
No. You buy this by the minute, bro.
Yeah.
Okay.
You provision and destroy.
You can't buy it. You can't.
You can buy what are called reserved instances.
Okay.
Which is I want to buy this much CPU. And I'm always going to buy it every year. I'm going to buy this many cores. Okay. Because this is what we're talking. Now you're talking about the commodity of cloud computing. Okay. Which is memory, CPU,
Disk space.
and networking. That's it. Those are it. That's the lifeblood of all of it, right? Do you have networking? Yep. Do you have disk? Yep. You have compute? Yep. Memory? Yep. You can run whatever you want. So it's not new, but it is
Okay.
for second tier companies. Not to say that Helldivers, the dev team, is bad. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is if you don't have a Netflix level team or Meta or whatever, there are guys like me that are learning shit right then.
Right.
Right. And dealing with scale problems in your specific situation. Like if there's no support for the engine, I don't think the engine's the problem, by the way, because the engine runs on your fucking computer. It doesn't matter. Right. Maybe the client is terrible. That's different.
Okay.
But the server side is something else. I don't know. Maybe there is some relationship, but I doubt it. I don't like, it feels like a weird place to connect a server to the game engine.
Okay.
Like maybe the data structure is really inefficient, right? And they have to send a lot more packets or
because
something.
they kept saying, the code. We got to look at the code. What
They
code?
did mention netcode. They did
What
mention
are they
that,
talking
so
about when
that's
they say that?
possible.
So netcode is how they create their game packets.
Yeah, the bundle the packets to
That's
go
right.
to
So
and from the server.
That's right. So because you need to protect it from cheaters, right? You can't have those people looking inside the netcode, right, and messing with it. So you have to encrypt it. That means the encryption. We talked about this before. The encryption lives on the PC and the memory, and then so that's all that. But they have to look at the netcode on their. So they look at that on the client, but that's not really related to the client. It's related to the communication of the client, right? So the client creates the packets and then puts them on the wire, and then a packet comes in on the wire. It disassembles the packet and looks at it, and then renders it on the screen, right? That's how it works. So you have these packets of data that are sitting around, and maybe they suck and they're too big, or they
They're out of
need to
order.
I mean, if it's UDP, I don't know, like there's a lot of because you have to reassemble them, and depending on if it's TCP, you don't, but if it's UDP, then they come in any order, but that doesn't really work for games like that. Maybe for like environmental stuff, but not for actual. Like I shot you, like no, I shot you first. My packet arrived first. Like I don't know, because there's no order, so it breaks causality and the fucking universe implodes.
Okay.
But yeah, it's to me, it's they had to switch techs, and that's another thing is like if you have
not technicians, people.
yeah, sorry, they had to switch technologies for whatever it is that they were dealing with. So if you have, let's say you buy a new induction oven, okay. And it consumes 60 amps. Not a lot of people have 60 amp fucking plug. Right. Some people, like even in the US, they only have 60 amp like panels. Like the whole panel is 60 amps. So you can't install a induction engine. So what do you have to do? You need more amperage from the street, and then you need a new panel. And that's like, I just want a new oven. Well, yeah, but that oven requires new infrastructure. So go do that, and then you can plug it in. And that's not something that's necessarily easy, right? You need to hire other trades. So if they're like, well, this API this API gateway that we're using is kind of limited to 20,000, and we need something that goes to 400,000, and they're like, well, you know who makes those? F5. Okay, and they cost 150 grand. So why don't you go figure out how to use that? And then they're like, I don't know how to configure an F5, right? So now you have to hire an F5 anyway. And then
that takes time.
Security, man. Yeah. Security. Like all these people that don't know what they're doing or like don't know about scale also have to secure all these packets that are coming in. It's a really crazy place to be. So I don't know, man. To me, it's like, give them 2 weeks.
Right.
They'll figure it out. Let somebody else suffer and you do something more fun, Nate.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I understand this. Okay. Say they're like, okay, we don't have the numbers. We'll never understand the numbers. The capacity limit's going to happen. Okay. In the future, games are going to hit capacity. If they're getting a buzz and there's a bunch of hype, servers are going to hit capacity. Is most likely going to happen. Okay, because
they will taper off.
Right, and no one can actually calculate how many players are going to hit on launch day. Okay,
Is that the golden?
Let's have
that's the
that.
golden goose. That to know that.
Yes,
that would be
amazing. But
That's
it's
how you
impossible.
win at anything, is
That's how you
predicting
win.
perfectly what you require.
but it's not
like,
gonna
what do you mean?
Right? So that's never going to happen.
Winning.
There's always going to be capacity limits, yada, yada, yada. Now, the planning should be what happens when we hit these capacities, okay? What can we do, or what can we have ready so when this hits capacity, we're ready to go?
Well, that's what I said earlier.
I'm
You
not
have
done.
to plan.
Oh, he's not done. Sorry.
Okay.
Now, other games have done this. Okay? World of Warcraft's been doing it since fucking 2000, what? 5? When did that come out?
Yeah, but that's what he's saying. You have to have that A-level team. Like
No,
that's
no,
an
it's not-
A-level
This isn't
team.
what I'm about to say isn't
That's
A
the A
level.
team.
It's me sitting in my computer being like, I've
That's
seen
Mr.
this.
T.
I've seen this happen, okay? Queues, properly implemented queues, queue lines, and AFK kickers. Why didn't they have the AFK kicker at the beginning? Why didn't they have a proper queue system at the beginning, ready to go for when they did hit the capacities?
Because so that's a wonderful question, and it's not a new one, and it's not something that is not understood in engineering in general.
Right.
Yeah, it's just
So
not
if
in the
I'm
plan.
assuming
If we
they
just
knew what
walk
it is.
out, yeah. So let's walk this back and like change industries for a second, okay? Bridges, they have a capacity, right? We very well
Yes.
understand the physical capacity of a bridge. Okay, how many tons can it take? Then they engineer it, and they're like, okay, we're gonna put it right to 15 tons. That's what we're gonna put on the sign, and 1 ounce over that, it's gonna fucking collapse. No, that's not what they do. They over-engineer by like a lot because people's lives are at stake.
Yeah.
Okay, and the government is paying, right?
Yeah.
Through our taxes to build these wonderful infrastructure pieces. No, but seriously,
That's
this is the
a
truth.
bit
There
different,
is
though.
nothing. No, you're right. There's nothing on the,
The
line with
impact-
Helldivers. Yes,
the impact
There's
is different.
nothing on the line. There's
Right.
Nate's anger,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Which
but they don't
about.
care. They
Yeah.
want
But
to
they do
maximize
care.
how much money they make.
And don't you think they want to make more money? So
Yes,
infuriating
but
people to
without
then-
investing it.
yes, but
Don't you understand?
yes, okay, I get that, but why can't they have a plan of a proper queue? So your bridge analogy, okay?
Costs more.
Now, they put the thing down, they say, no more people on the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay? The cars coming up to the bridge, they're not going to turn around, drive elsewhere for a week, and come back to the bridge. They want to stay and wait in line until it's their turn to go across the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay? Why can't they have just had that ready?
Because they honestly thought that people would leave and go do
No,
something else.
it doesn't
They'll
happen
come
in
back.
gaming.
They'll come back. That's the answer. That's the answer. If we hit capacity, don't worry. We'll handle it. It won't be that bad. And it was really bad.
It just
now-
wasn't in the plan.
But
To
now,
have a queue.
every MMO game that comes out in the future should have these two things. I think in pre-production,
That
all
is a
this-
fair thing.
Okay,
Yes.
they should have a queue ready to go, coded, ready to go, and tested. A queue, and they should have an AFK timer,
And a session
especially
timeout.
yes, a session timeout, especially in an MMO where people are getting together with parties because one guy will be like, "Oh, I'll get in
You
there."
know how dangerous a session timeout is? If you guys knew how dangerous it is to disconnect a client without like the overt or explicit action of disconnecting a client is like, get the fuck out of my store. You're done here. And
Well,
it's
for
like
a
and the
game-
guy's like no, and
for
the
a
guy's like
game,
playing and he's like and then he gets disconnected. He's like idle timeout. It's like, but I wasn't idle. Oh, we have a bug. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much worse is that?
Now, that's a good question. So I'm playing.
Way worse, I
I'm playing,
promise.
yeah, and then I get kicked out, and then I'm putting queue, right?
Yeah. So no session timeouts until you know that they work without kicking out people that shouldn't be kicked out.
Wow.
So that's a really dangerous feature, but the queuing feature, I agree. Now, you can take all of these games and you can say, what is the base set of features that these games have? Okay. And at some point at the beginning of this genre, there was some set of features, and now there's a different set, or there's an expanded set, right? And in the future, there will be an even future expanded. And you are saying that queues and reliable idle timeout
Okay. Yes.
is are table stakes. That's kind of what you say, right? Like, you want to sit at this table, these features are required.
Mm-hmm.
The market has not forced that yet, but it might be. Well, I think what the devs are waiting for, honestly, is a tech jump.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, we just want bigger pipes.
Yeah, okay.
We don't want to build all these crazy systems to deal with all these whatever. We just want a system that can do 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I want it to cost nothing, please.
Yeah.
What's that going to take? No, and then that's what the industry works towards, right? I mean, look at the pipes we have. I was downloading I don't know. I was downloading a patch, or the Baldur's Gate patch. And
yes.
I always get gig. Always. Doesn't matter what time it is. I'm downloading at 98 megabytes per second.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on. You know? I can get everything instantly to my house. Like, the pipes exist. But the problem with that is that you have more people. So those other pipes have to get bigger. And they will. So I think that this problem will likely disappear as the market defines what the major pain points are of the user experience when it comes to massively multiplayer online gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And
maybe the service providers also accommodate more.
They build custom shit, bro, is what they do.
Yeah,
Microsoft's going to be like, you wanna host your...
No, now they do, yeah. But I'm saying, like, as we go further, maybe, like, gaming is huge, so I don't know how they haven't done this already, but, like, offer pre-made things that are already catered towards game hosting, you know what I mean? Instead of having to meet with the dev team, figure out what they need.
You're going to get a very homogenous experience then. So what you'll end up getting is a lot of clients that act the same way, that are built on the same libraries to interact with the same service provider's backend, which also creates a whole security thing. Microsoft's like, okay, we built this service for all these gaming guys, so now they're the target. Okay, the hackers are all going to look at Microsoft, so Microsoft's got to beef up all the security forces, make sure that that's not working. They're going to charge the fuck out of it, because it's like, yeah, we're taking the hit.
By law, they have to, though, already. Those cloud providers, no? They have to be...
Yeah,
they have to be like SOC 2, Type 2, whatever.
They're SOC Type 2, they're ISO 27001, they're NIST, they're all that stuff. But they also need to actually protect. So those other things that you're talking about are like configurations and policies and ways that things are run. I'm talking about like Microsoft actually having to be
present,
0-day aware, trolling the dark web, watching their networks for shit that is being attacked not because of what they're hosting, but what their customers are hosting. So they're doing that security analysis all the time in order to keep their customers safe.
I mean, they're doing that now. Government has cloud hosting.
More, and there's even more. Yeah. They need more. So as the environment becomes more complex, and this service, like a gaming host service, like it needs to be able to take packets of any type. Are you going to start defining the netcode for all games? Right? Like, are you talking, like, what's this service look like? I'm throwing shit out. Like, it's just random, whatever I'm making up, but it's a really complicated thing to host 500,000 people.
There you go. There you go. There you
Especially if you're Helldivers 2, bro.
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah.
Jeez, so, all right, Nate, what else do you have here? You got
just one more thing. Well, there was some, like, people are saying, can't you just send Sony to help the development team? They did. Okay, but it takes people to train the Sony people on what they're doing. Yada, yada,
It's called ramp up.
Yeah.
You got to ramp them up on the code base and what the fucking problem is. Yeah.
I understand that. So,
you got to brief them.
Now, do you guys remember any MMO game that launched in recent memory that wasn't so bad? Do you guys have any, like maybe a day or two? Like a day or two where it was like, okay, server capacity, but then after a couple of days, they're like, haha.
I haven't really played a lot of MMOs.
Oh, I think I do have an answer for this.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Diablo 4. Okay?
Yeah, that's fair.
Diablo 4 was pretty friggin' good launch. You know why?
That's not a coincidence.
You know
Except
why?
for you had to buy that $2.99 motherfucker, you know what I'm saying, to get in.
I'd buy $2.99 to fucking Helldivers to fix their shit too. Okay? But that's not what I'm talking about. So, Diablo 4, they had 3 betas. Okay? 2 closed. Okay. They also had early access for the deluxe edition purchasers, and then they launched.
Mhm.
Okay.
Again, that's Blizzard.
How much money does Blizzard have again? Can you tell me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Blizzard.
But, okay. This
That
has
work with
happened in the
Microsoft?
past. Why can't I'm not gonna don't heat me up here. Okay.
Blizzard.
It's so fun.
Yes, I know it's Blizzard, okay? But they took experience from the gaming industry of years of games releasing, like World of Warcraft or Overwatch or whatever, right?
Yeah, the same
have-
people.
Yes,
They have
yes,
money,
I
though.
understand that. But
like
why
saying-
can't another company say, "Oh,
I love my Porsche. It's not a giant piece of shit like my Toyota Tercel.
yeah, okay." But now, even after that, even after the multiple betas and closed betas and the early access and then the launch, they still had a few days of like hiccups, okay? Which then got pretty ironed out, and I was always playing. I was never out of playing that game for more than like 4 or 5 hours. Like if I got hit with a capacity limit or a queue, I was in that server within 4
Yeah,
hours.
there was a queue. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a couple times where I was in queue.
Now,
And it was
When
a
I'm-
bit laggy.
when
also,
I'm making
but I
a
was
game,
in.
yeah, exactly. I could fiddle around with
There
my
was
gear.
some
I don't care.
banding, right? Like
Yeah.
rubber
Yeah.
Oh,
banding
yeah.
a bit, yeah.
I could sit in my inventory and just fuck around with my inventory while the servers were lagging around me. That
The
didn't
availability was not compromised. That's what you're
if
saying.
I'm building a game, okay, and I look back, this is going to be back to where my analytics question. I look back and I say, oh, I know Diablo with Blizzard's multi-billionaires, whatever, but like the strategy they had leading up to their launch, I can do too.
No.
I can run
That's a false
I can
premise.
run 2 or 3 betas. I can have a closed beta. I can sell a deluxe edition with early access and then have a launch. And that can give me better analytics on
Yeah, you'll know exactly how many for early access you'll have because you know how many copies of that you sold.
Yeah.
So you might have
you can
everybody
plan for
that bought
that.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
deluxe
you can plan
version
for
of
that.
players got in first, right? And they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great." Yada yada yada. And then they're looking at all the analytics. They're like, "Oh wow, okay, so we're hitting these limits, we're hitting these numbers, and it's just the deluxe people buying."
Yeah,
Right?
but more importantly, what they're seeing is where the pain is.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing where the system is starting. So what you need here is instrumentation, right? You need the data coming out of your systems to tell you if they're healthy. And if they're like tachometers, like basically you look at some of these
Health checks.
dashboards. Yeah, health checks, but more importantly, provider health checks. Am I about to hit a throttle limit?
Mm.
What's my TAC look like?
Yeah.
Right? Like, am I about to redline
Power
Azure?
BI shit.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you have these situations where the problem might be in a number of places.
But did you pay the subscription to get the access to that information? Did you pay that tier? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. You have to.
Like
or
Microsoft's not going to tell you that
is
unless
it
you
even on? Have
Yeah.
you turned it on?
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you're like, oh my god, turn on the logs, and then we'll see what's wrong. So you actually have to let it continue so that you can collect data to figure out what's going on.
establish a baseline.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to having like the same system, Blizzard has a unified way of their clients talking to their games.
Ah, yes. Okay. Yep.
So it's like add Diablo onto our API gateway, put a new instance up of our API gateway that we already built for another system. So they standardize on these systems that they built with years of experience.
Right.
Not only that, they probably have custom code inside Azure because they're Microsoft now.
Yes. Okay.
So
yes.
So
I-
using them specifically, who has a relationship with the cloud provider, is a little bit like it's
yes,
hard,
I
yeah.
understand that being hard, but what I'm trying to point out
Well, then they
is
just got acquired.
is how they rolled it out. I guess not the not the tech behind it, because I
The
understand
process.
How, yeah, that the process of what they were thinking, like how
The
important
transparent
it
process
is,
that
how
everyone knew
important it
about.
is to run, those open betas, the closed betas, the whatever, offering an early access. Even if you stamp early access on it, it's going to shut up half of those people. Right? So it's
Yeah.
early access for 2 weeks. Okay? And then everyone's like, wah, wah. It's like, sorry, it says early access. You're going to have problems. So shut up. Right? So
Yeah, but the danger there is that people are putting that on games and leaving it for 10 years. Like fucking Tarkov,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
But,
it's a beta for 7 years. Like what?
And even like But I think a really big part of it, or a really good thing that people have been doing, I know a lot of people don't like it, but like buying the deluxe version to get the early access is huge. I think that's a really, like, I'll pay an extra $20 on top of my ticket price to get in early, to play for those 7 days earlier and not experience bullshit. Because usually during that early access, it's pretty smooth for those like, not early access. Like, I'm not saying early access in development. I'm saying early access to the game before it's launched. Like, I had a week of early access to Diablo 4.
Open beta. You want open beta.
Not even
Same thing.
more. No, check it out. So there
What's the difference?
There was open betas, and then Diablo said, we're going to launch on June 5th or whatever it was. But if you buy the deluxe version, you get to play a week earlier. But it's on the same stable. It's on the launch code. It's on everything that's going to be launching on June 5th.
What if, okay, no, that's bullshit. What if they're like, you know what? We just found the devastating bug during early access, and the client that they release on release day is not the one that was out for early access. It's patched already.
Now.
So is that the release or not? Like, I mean, chicken or egg? Like,
well, egg. But.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. It is egg.
Because of the evolution. But.
Yeah, no, because
now.
Because of the hatching.
All I'm saying is, even in that week, there's a game crashing bug. Okay. Now people they've paid their extra ticket price to play the game earlier, and it's not tagged early access. You get
that's a very good word,
right? They don't tag it, right? So when they're playing, and then they're like, "Oh shit, there's something definitely wrong here." Okay, and we better get it ready for launch day, which is a week away. Let's say even 2 weeks. Okay, I think that early access time as well gives enough analytics to further help a launch day.
Absolutely. All data helps.
Right. And in my opinion,
big data, baby.
I didn't see any big data leading up to the Helldivers 2 release. Right? But why would they? Right? It's just a small studio.
They don't know shit, man. They're just a bunch of like people. You know, they're just figuring it out, bro.
Now,
and they got up to 800K. They did it.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I don't play it anymore.
7 days. I know. I know. And you know why? They're like, look, we did all this shit and you're gone now.
You know why? I'm gone because I couldn't play in the first 2 weeks.
Bullshit. I guarantee you would have been gone already.
Nope.
This game doesn't have enough. It doesn't. It doesn't have the depth to keep you there for thousands of hours.
No, that I agree.
Right? Yeah. So what are they going to invest?
Yeah.
What do you want from them?
All I want, this is my ending.
Leo bought it and returned it. He's like, this game is not good enough.
I can't return it.
I know. He did it within 2 hours. I told him, I'm like, 2 hours. You only have 2 hours.
I can't do it on PS5. That's what I thought
when I started playing, and I was like, okay, this seems kind of really easy, and I'm just shooting some bugs. Like,
I can't.
Yeah, that was just fun. But
I can't return on PS5. If I download the game, I can't return it on PS5. Not even the playtime, because Sony, right? So again, I wish maybe I would have bought it on Steam because I would have returned it within if it
Can I still return it on Steam?
2 hours.
2 hours
playtime.
If I hit 3 days and I still couldn't play, that would have been returned.
Totally fair.
That would have been fucking returned.
That's fair.
Yeah, if you couldn't play it at all,
Yeah. Well, I couldn't play it at all.
But
the first 3 days.
If you look at the if you look at the community, they have hit a steady state, and they actually only missed by half. They were able to do 260, and they should have been
2.8 hours.
You're sorry,
but they came once they came out with the timeout kick. I had no issues.
Yeah, but it's a dangerous feature.
Okay. So my final comment is, anybody who's listening to this computer chair dev, okay, give us more open betas, okay, and give us access. I'll buy. Give me options. Give me options. I'll buy to start playing earlier just to test your shit, okay? Because if I buy earlier and not everyone else, I'm gonna have more room to play. The servers are going to be open for me, okay? And I'll be able to. But open betas, early access is great. Have a freaking queue. At least have a queue ready because I want to see. I want to see a timer. I want to see how many people are in front of me, so I know I can plan my day. Oh, I'll go do groceries for an hour. I'll go fucking walk the dogs, and I'll be back in 2 hours, and maybe I'll be closer to the line.
Absolutely.
Give me that.
Yeah, the queue, you need to have a
Okay.
queue. That's a
I
big
agree.
brain fart. there that we
After
would do that.
Chris has explained all this, the AFK timer, I'll walk back on that one.
Well, I mean, or you can demand it, but just say, I want a reliable AFK timer. If you just scream it about an AFK timer, you'll get that response. But if you add the word reliable, then they're like, okay. Okay. Like, I get it. Like, because they're like, oh, you don't want to fuck with people's experience. I just want something that reliably kicks people off that are idle.
Mm-hmm.
Please. Can you not implement that? And maybe they can't. Maybe they can't detect idleness very well. Maybe there's like some kind of weird motion or something that's, I don't know.
But what code would that be in? Would that be the game engine code, or would that be some net code?
It would definitely be an analysis of the netcode. And
both, wouldn't it? But no,
like you need, the client isn't kicking you off.
No.
Right. Okay.
Right? It's the server kicking you off.
Mm-hmm.
But based on what the server is receiving from the client. If they're not getting anything other than, keep alive.
But we don't know
for the
what they're
connection.
sending.
Right.
Because the netcode is secret, and it necessarily has to be, because that's how you hack it.
It's secret.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, man. This was so much fun.
No, thank you, Chris. You've put a lot into perspective that brought my brain down,
I love this topic. I love the topic of scale, and I love the topic of cloud, because it like democratizes access to really powerful shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you were asking about an MMO that launched well.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Snap. It killed.
I
never waited for more than like a minute in queue. It was always right around my level.
Mm-hmm.
The client always worked good.
You know why?
Why?
Because they had multiple open betas and closed betas.
Okay, fair. But
all right, so Nate is a proponent of the beta.
There
He's a
it
beta
is.
man.
Yay,
You're a
that's
real
great.
beta.
I'm a beta.
You're
I'm a
real
beta male.
You're a real beta male.
I want more Sigma test.
Okay, well, I can't think of one. I don't typically play other than shooters, and the shooters that I play
Are all dog shit?
are all riddled with problems. So I mean, yeah, Call of Duty is fucking awful. But I only play that because my two idiot friends they only play that. So, but yeah, I can't think of anything. Like Hearthstone, I started playing 12 years ago. I don't fucking remember that. But again, that's Blizzard, and I'm sure it was fine. Mm-hmm. It was fine.
Just added it to the API.
Yeah, just add it in there. There you go. Thanks a lot, Chris, for putting all of this in perspective. Hopefully people enjoyed that kind of tech deep dive. Hopefully it didn't put too many people,
To sleep
or like off put them, because they don't know what the hell we're talking about. But
here at the Elder Trolls,
I think
sometimes
it's valuable.
Exactly.
information.
and I'm on the Discord server. If anyone's interested in the topics, just write it out. Like if you're like in the software development field or whatever, I always talk about this stuff. I love it.
There you go. Yeah, give us a message.
Snakefactory on Discord.
Yeah, in our Discord. Check it out. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks everyone for taking the time to listen or watch. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Check out our other content. Give us a rating or review on Spotify or Apple if you could. You can leave us a DM on Facebook, Discord, whatever you have. Tweet us if you want to shit talk us or leave us a comment or whatever. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.
Peace.
Bye.